Checking. Yes, it's all working. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We are back with some astrophotography processing, photograph processing tonight. The clouds have rolled in, but as I suspected, this was going to be the case anyway. So it is good to see you here. My name is Tom. I am the Astro Canuck, and usually I am taking live photographs of the universe, but unfortunately, because we have a lot of clouds, we are going to be processing one of the images I took last week. So it's kind of what I've said before, my rainy day astronomy. And I've changed up some settings on here in a way to hopefully have make things a little better, make things run a little smoother. I've had some issues before, and yeah, I just want to make sure that things just run as smooth as possible, because it's just the way how things go. It's a learning process that I'm still picking out the fine tuning of everything here. So that's yeah, it's the kind of the quick rundown of what's been going on. So adorable. Thank you very much. Good to see you in here. Now I do have the telescope is covered up, and I'm not anticipating the clouds clearing up at all tonight, so it's probably not going to come under its cover. However, did add a little bit of a little Halloween theme for the month and give it a little ghost face. And yes, that is thanks to So Adorable's suggestion to at least Halloween-y it up a little bit with the scope cover. I was going to jokingly take credit for it, but nah. Not going to. That is not the hill I want to die on. So, but I do have the ASI Air is running, Stellarium is running, and we'll, as we're kind of going through with processing the image, maybe we'll jump into Space Engine, have a tour around the universe, and that is twofold why I want to do that, because last time I noticed that the stream, it was really choppy, and I hope that everything that I've done has worked out. And it's kind of one of those things where I'm just testing it in production. As also being a former web designer, that is kind of how things go. Like, yeah, sure, I can test it, but I'll do a lot of testing live, and that's fine. I think it's a process. We're all learning something here. I'm maybe not even a month into doing this kind of semi-regularly. So there's lots to learn, lots of new things to kind of pick up, and yeah, hopefully I can share that information, that what I've learned, to kind of pass along if anybody has any questions about things. In terms of, in no way am I a professional in being able to offer advice for streaming, because that is way out of my league at the moment. But for the ghosts might come later. After I'm kind of done the space portion of this, I might jump into Phasmophobia again, and that was pretty fun last night. Despite the bit of issues that I was having with staying connected, and apparently they were having problems with the server. So that was what I thought might have been something on my end. It was something on their end with things. But again, changing some settings. I'll see how the game runs on the computer and the streaming. We'll see how that goes. But for now, this is astrophotography, and what I'm going to do is I will be processing the image from the very beginning, so you can see exactly what goes on. The other week I did do that with, I just had the image all ready to go, but I'm going to run it through Deep Sky Stacker. We'll see some of the settings that I work with, and again, by no means is this a two-letter tutorial. This is what's worked for me, and I have kind of tweaked my process from what I've learned from other people. So it's just one of those things where you're gonna evolve as you go, and just the more that you do it, the more you do, you're gonna want to experiment more with different settings. So it's yeah, it's just that continuing process of being able to find out what works, find out what doesn't work. I have some files that I've done, and it's probably 10 different versions of the same image that I've processed, and I've got 10 different results from how I stack it using it in Deep Sky Stacker. And we'll kind of see that. I may do a couple, maybe I'll do a couple options as I run through them, so you can kind of see what happens in the output there. But for now, it's I do have one image that's queued up, and maybe if there's some time, I'll kind of quickly run through that one to see what kind of a different result I get. But for now, I will just have a quick look at in the file system for the ASI Air. And now what I am looking at, this will be some of the images that I will be working on. This is the Cave Nebula. And as you can see, this is an example of a single image. This is a single exposure. It was 5 minutes long, I believe. No, these were shorter. These were 3 minutes, 3-minute exposures. And you can just barely see in the right in the middle there is the object of our attention tonight. That is the Cave Nebula. Rather unremarkable through a single image. And we'll show you just how when you process the image, just how much it changes from this with a bit of noise to a much more detailed and contrasting image compared to what this was. So as when you are doing astrophotography, there are just a lot of images that you are taking, because you want to improve that signal to noise ratio. And there's always going to be inherent noise that comes with a astrophotography camera or even a DSLR camera. DSLRs having probably more noise because those are designed for daytime bright light photography. And when you're doing a long exposure with the DSLR, you're just going to get that thermal noise building up, and sometimes you can see the temperature of the sensor rising to 20-30 degrees Celsius, and that's just always going to create a lot more noise in your image, and you want to take more photographs to average out that noise so you are left with your signal from all the images there. And let me just have a look at, just make sure that for all the images, yeah, so the images that I'll be working with, usually I shoot 5-minute images. However, I was trying to keep the noise low on this, despite the camera that I was using is an Astronomy dedicated camera that will cool down to 30 degrees Celsius below the ambient temperature. So I was shooting at -10, and that has worked for me well in the past. And from what I've seen other people doing, that 10 degrees is a nice sweet spot for things, because if you want to cool it even lower, the chances are, if your nights aren't going to be that cool to begin with, you may not be able to reach anything lower than 10-15 degrees. And at 15 from 10 degrees isn't that much of a change, and it's you're just going to be pushing the camera to run a little harder, and it's not it's just not going to be worth it for your efforts to push the camera that little bit farther when you're not going to get much more result from it. So the object that I'm looking at is the Cave Nebula, and see if we have a quick look in Stellarium. And that is up in the northern part of the sky for me, so that is a nice area for me to capture images from, because it is a clear spot in the sky, and just the way how it is, because it's so close to the celestial pole, is it doesn't track too quickly overnight, so I can generally have a nice image that's tracking the whole night, and even before it hits the meridian, and I have multiple hours available before that causes any not causes any issues with the telescope rig, but just so it doesn't cause any potential hiccups that would come from it. Whereas there have been earlier versions of the ASI Air, which is the Raspberry Pi controlled computer that I use, that the meridian flip didn't work too well, because there is just this imaginary transverse line that once the telescope reaches a certain point, it just runs into danger of hitting the mount itself, and so it'll go flip back to the other side on its on the right ascension axis and be pointing back to the target. So in the camera, your image will be flipped, but things like that in the stacking program, that'll flip it over automatically. That's nothing to worry about. But yeah, definitely these targets in this area of the sky are much a little more advantageous for me to capture. Now in Stellarium, that doesn't really have the detail of the object. We can see the area that the object is going to be in, and I will. So that is this red box is the sensor size and the field of view that I would have with my telescope and the camera combination. And that is using a Ritchie-Chrétien design telescope at about 979 millimeters, and that's using a focal reducer, and that changed the focal length from about 1600 millimeters down to 979, just allowing that little larger field of view. And what that does, it also kind of reduces the focal ratio, which helps introduce, it doesn't help introduce, it helps the light gathering capabilities. So it doesn't have to, it's just more efficient in gathering the light. So you can spend a little less time per exposure to be getting the amount of signal coming into your camera. So we can see it does fit. It does kind of you can see it does kind of match up there with the stars, and I am beginning to think that possibly this was this with it? Am I getting my images muddled up here? Was this a wide field shot of the cave, or was this? This looks like it's from August. All right. Well, I haven't really done this image anyway, so. Actually, let's see if we have. Just double checking out the images. Yeah, you know, we're gonna run with this one, because I'm also gonna do this image and the. Oh, sorry. Let's jump back to the image manager. We're gonna do the Cave Nebula and the Heart Nebula, which was the image I had released earlier on my Instagram page, and that was the way how that was processed. I liked it. I really liked how it came out. but there's just always different ways to kind of bring out new details in there. So that is the, yeah, that cave nebula, that's the area of the sky that we'll be looking at. And we will jump into Photoshop. Actually, no, sorry, not jumping into Photoshop. We are actually going into Deep Sky Stacker. All right. So this is the program Deep Sky Stacker, and what it does is this loads you into the program, and this is what processes the images from the cave nebula that we're working on right now. So this was actually this one was shot in August, and this was I was actually using a 72 millimeter refractor telescope, so we're at a much wider focal length, actually, to be fair. So I'm trying to think back to what I did. I did do an image the other week when it was surprisingly a clear sky. I have to go through the files and see what that is. But again, the Cave Nebula, I haven't processed this image yet, so it's one that we'll be having a look at for the first time, really. So the data could be good, the data could be all right. So yeah, actually, overall, this is kind of this will be exciting to see how it turns out. Now, what you can do is in Deep Sky Stacker is that you want to find the image. So you can see in here, I had a satellite that went through. You just see that line coming through, and that's an image that we probably wouldn't want to use. And usually you can kind of go through this and pick out whatever images I have, like the airplanes, or actually this looks like might actually even be an airplane that had gone through the image. Ms. Meacher, hello, thanks for stopping by. That the image that you're dealing with, because yeah, this was an airplane that had come through, because you can just see how everything, these dots are also repeating, so those are the other lights along the image. So actually what I will do is I'm going to get rid of that, because that's just gonna, that can cause problems. And usually what you can do is you can go through these one by one, and because these images actually they're smaller in file size, I think that they're about 17 megabytes each. From my old camera with the DSLR, they were 35 megabytes because it was a larger sensor, and it would take a little while to load up. But for the most part, I'm going to say that was a fluke to catch that one where it was with that airplane going through. But what I usually do is I'll almost pick one of the earlier images from the night, because that's going to be centered on the target, because as you're taking the pictures, you dither, and that just kind of slightly shifts the image ever so slightly in a random direction. So you are doing you're averaging out your the noise, and you're just getting all the signal that's out. That is it's gonna line up. So you can see the stars in the little zoomed in box in the upper right corner, in the upper left corner, sorry. Those are nice round stars, and this was at a wider focal length, and usually you're going to get your guiding and tracking is going to be a lot more forgiving at longer focal lengths. So you can even afford to do even longer exposures without any problems with the mount not tracking properly. So what I will do on that one there is Okay, it doesn't show the. Okay, it shows the menu that pops up there. So what I will do is I'll use that as the reference frame. So every other image that I've taken will make sure that it lines up with this image. So we'll see in the end once that's done processing. We'll you kind of see how the image comes out where it is misaligned in some areas because just due to the dithering, it picks out that different area of the sky. But also because this is a longer focal length, there probably wouldn't be too much shift back and forth. So we'll check all the pictures. And, all right. So this does seem like, okay, overall this might be better as maybe a YouTube video for processing because just with the Streamlabs, it doesn't seem that it picks up the other settings boxes. So I'll just kind of run through what I'm looking at on this end here. Is that I'm picking my stacking parameters because it'll choose to align the image in a few different ways. You can either have a centered image where you are left with a better cropped image to work with in the end, and because it'll be referenced by the light frame. Other times there's a mosaic, and at least you can see what's been cropped out, and that's generally the setting that I do use. And what I might do is, because this is the resolution on, now, I'm going to leave it like where that is. And just pick the file output so I know where it's going to go. And yeah, there's just a few other options that you're going to have to when I'm picking to stack the frame, and it's just based off of the color channels, and also depending on if you have a low signal to noise ratio, it's there's different processes that you can use for how it aligns the images and how it deals with excluding some noise. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to run this now, and it is, so this image that we'll be working with is what I have on here is 3.5 hours worth of total exposure time. And once that's done, it'll reject a couple of frames as well, based on if the stars aren't as round, if maybe there was an error during the tracking, if there was a little bit of movement, it'll automatically reject those files. And we'll see how that goes there, how that will come out. So that's running there. And it'll be about 2 minutes for that to finish processing. Usually sometimes if it's a larger image, or if I'm using more subframes, and those subframes are the images that you take with the lens cap on the camera, as it were, and that just records just the noise that comes from the sensor itself. So you're not capturing any images of your target. It's just in the dark, and those are your dark frames, and that kind of gets rid of any of the noise that comes from the sensor as it's heating up. There are also your flat frames, and those are used to get rid of any dust motes or any vignetting that kind of comes naturally from a telescope. And those are used by shining a flat light across the objective of the scope, and those are taken at fairly short exposures, and that just kind of gets rid of, like I said, the dust motes and and any kind of color banding that happens in there. And those can be fairly important because when you're editing your image, I'll see on this one, I don't know if there is going to be much in the way of that because I do try to keep the scope fairly clean on the objective, and because it is basically a sealed system, I'm not always going to be getting dust into the onto the sensor. And because I was using a fairly new camera, I really hope there wasn't going to be any dust on the sensor. So that's computed the images, and it looks like we are stacking 67 frames, so we're just losing about 6 minutes worth of images. That's not too bad. So the total image would be 3 hours and 24 minutes. Sorry, 21 minutes, because it was 3 hours, 27 minutes. I can math sometimes. So what this has done now, it has registered the pictures, so it knows how they're all going to be lined up there. And it, like I said, it rejected 2 images, possibly because it just didn't match up the criteria of what it wanted to, what designated a good image to stack on there. So there could have been another satellite going through the image. It could have been an airplane. Like I said, there could have been an error in the tracking. And it can be any number of issues, but it's also one of the things, if it was an image that I had spent a lot of time on, and it's not to devalue this image, but if you are going for a really detailed image that you really want to show off, you're going to spend a little more time on it. It's not that I don't want to spend time on this. However, it is, like I said before, is I do get a lot of enjoyment out of doing the 10-minute, 5-minute single exposures to share with you guys on here. And that's just that's the aspect of astrophotography that I've really gravitated to, and other people are happier with doing the processing. They almost wouldn't, they couldn't care less about capturing the images. They want to collect all the images and then get into the nitty gritty of processing. And some people can take long. You're going to spend sometimes more time editing the image than you have collected the images. There are other people who really enjoy the whole process of going out and setting up a telescope, and if you're in a dark sky site, and just collecting those photons and just taking in the whole experience of being out under the stars while your camera's doing its thing. There are other people, some who are fine with sitting in the house while the telescope does its thing outside. However, I do still like sitting outside and just looking up for myself, just doing visual observing, because especially during meteor season, when there is a meteor shower, it's just nice to sit back and look up and maybe catch one or two, and other people are like, oh, I saw dozens, I saw so many, they weren't stopping. And I'm like, I don't know what meteor shower you were looking at, because we're all looking at the same sky essentially. So that image, that's there we go, that is our final stacked image. And as you can see, looking up in the top left corner in the zoomed in box, you can see that's how the stacked images kind of that's how they kind of line up, where this was our basically, say, using this as the guide star. I never see, I barely see them myself. There have been some nights I've caught them doing some 30-second exposures with the camera, but as far as always catching them with your own eye, it could be as you're moving, just scanning across the sky, maybe a car has gone by and you catch that, like, oh, was that one? No. So yeah, I haven't seen a really good outburst of a meteor shower in quite a while. I can't even think the last time. I was probably a kid when I don't even know which meteor shower it was, because at that time I wasn't. I would just hear, "Oh, there's a meteor shower. Okay, let's go out and look. Let's look up." I'm not sure which one it was, but we did see quite a few. I couldn't even hazard what date, what time of year that was, but in the area that I'm in the UK, if it's cloudy, which it not 90, which it usually can be, it's hard to even be able to see any meteor showers. But we are approaching the Orionid meteor shower soon, and that, as always, they're like, "Oh, it's going to be a good. It could be a good outburst." You can't totally predict when it's going to be a really good meteor shower, but it's always good to be able to sit outside, keep warm, and look up and just enjoy that. Now, this is just the first version of the stacked image that we get out of there. And yeah, like I said, total exposure 3 hours and 21 minutes. So again, like I said, rather unremarkable to look at the moment. So what we then do is we take it into Photoshop. Now this is the image that I have on here. This is one that we'll maybe look at in a little bit. But we'll open up our image of the Cave Nebula that we just processed, that we just did the stacking. So like I said, this is the the image of the Cave Nebula. And again, you're really only seeing the bright stars in this at the moment, because there's a little bit of a fair bit of processing that you're gonna have to do to kind of get rid of any, or to kind of bring out the details. Now, what I've also noticed with this camera that I'm using is if I'm doing adjusting the levels on here, I actually don't touch that until a little later, because it's just the way how this stacked image comes out. I might actually be doing a little more damage, as it were, to the image, kind of getting rid of some of those the data that's in there. But so you just kind of just adjusting the levels. That's a rough idea of what you're kind of going to see from it. But what I want to do is crop that in a little bit, because that kind of gets rid of, you saw those jagged edges around there. That's the mosaic of how the image comes out from stacking. So just bring that in. Actually, what I can do from this one is I can be a little more aggressive with bringing in there, because I do know that some of the stars around the edges are rounded a bit, and that comes from being too far away from the flattener. And that works as, because you still have, there's the whole telescope, but then when you have the flattener and the reducer on there before the camera, it needs to be a certain distance to be able to achieve focus in the telescope. But also there is the just the curvature that does need to be adjusted with that. that if you're too close to your flattener, you get rounded. So you get if you're too far, you get rounded stars in the corner. If you're too close, the stars almost kind of seem to be zooming in and out. So it's yeah, just being too not at the right distance to the sensor. But again, that's kind of one of those things for me. It's if I'm cropping in, that's the target is always going to be in the center of the image, and you're not going to be too fussed on losing data around the corners there, because that also kind of gets rid of any of the vignetting of the shadow of the tube that'll show up around there. There are some tutorials that I've seen that people have done to put in a lot of work to, pardon me, to reduce the amount of curvature that there is around the edges of the image. And I think that's something that's definitely worth checking out, because there are stars in the corner of these images that aren't as round as they could be. But the whole point of this image wasn't to... I could take a little more time again with the telescope setup, because I don't like to waste a lot of time in the night trying to get this this perfect field of view in there. It's one of those things you could take. It probably wouldn't take a lot of time to do, but with clear skies being at a premium, and I'm also using a color camera, because if you use a monochrome camera, there's just so much more that you kind of got to worry about with collecting each area, each color. So if you're doing the RGB image, you have to do 3 separate filters for a monochrome camera, whereas with these with the one-shot color camera that I'm using, it's just one shot and there you have your color image, at the sacrifice of a little bit of detail. And I've seen the black and white images that come out of a monochrome camera, and yeah, there is a lot sharper detail right out of the gate, but at the same time, it's one of those things where you're not to do what I want to do. It's better to have a color camera, because just looking at a black and white camera, while it has really nice contrast, it's just that little bit of okay, well, where's the color that I usually see? And that's just well, with processing that you got to do to kind of bring it out. And I'm not about to be doing a processed image every single shot that I do. Whereas yeah, with the combination that I'm using with the camera and the ASI Air, I can bring that one color image, and we can move on to the next target, ooh and ah, and move on to the next target and talk about things like that. Whereas if I was doing this for every image I took, the stream would be way too long, and most people would kind of bow out after the first image, and it's okay, that's good. Whereas I like to be able to do a 5-10 minute image, and we see a new target every 10-15 minutes. So with this image now, you do have to change the mode. It is at 32 bits, and Photoshop won't do a whole lot of adjustments in a 32-bit image, so you do want to drop it down to 16 bits. And now you can't see. On the levels, I do have a lot more room to pull out or to bring it closer to the data, because there isn't, from what I'm moving the slider on here, is that all this all that darkness, that there's no data in there. So bringing the slider over just will allow me to get to get more detail out of there. And now adjusting those, familiar with adjusting for your regular photographs, just using the curves adjustment there, being able to highlight the areas. And I do want to kind of just I don't want to get too aggressive on things, because I think if you start getting too aggressive, you just can't get that little bit of finesse to bring out the image. Because if you slowly build it up, then you can see how things are changing. And you can kind of see on here there's an overall green cast. And what I'll do is, again, just bring in my sliders, and I'll do one more adjustment on the curves, because I'm starting to see the separation of the red, green, and blue, because the filter that I was using is a narrowband filter, and it's only going to let through a little bit of hydrogen alpha, a little bit of oxygen 3, and a little bit of hydrogen beta. And that basically corresponds to red, green, and blue on the camera sensor. Whereas there's other filters that will just do hydrogen alpha, and you're not going to get much signal from the green or the blue channel. So you can essentially, those two will get thrown away, and you're just using the data from the hydrogen alpha. And I did do a quick test on this earlier to make sure that I could do it. Is I'll show the individual black and white color channels, so we can see exactly what's picked up there. So actually, I can probably even start looking at this right now. So you can see I switched to the channel. So the image that we're looking at, that's the full color image right now that combines the red, the green, and the blue. And so if I just look at let's say the blue channel, so this is just the blue light that was picked up by the blue sensors, and there's not a lot that you can see in there. You can see the stars, because those have fully saturated the sensors around there. Looking in the green channel, you can just see it's a little more. There's more green sensors on a color camera than there are red and blue, because the way how the matrix works out, it's red, green, green, and blue, and then that just repeats throughout the whole camera. Because of this Bayer matrix, generally for color cameras, they are mainly used for terrestrial photography, and there's more green than anything else that we're gonna be seeing on Earth. Whereas in space, the hydrogen alpha wavelengths are primarily in the red, and that's where you're gonna see there's more hydrogen gas in the galaxy than there is on Earth. So yeah, looking at the photographs from a terrestrial camera, there's always just going to be more vibrant greens than anything out of there. So the signal on here, while it's nice and clean, because there's less, like even zooming in, there isn't really any graininess to it, and even the blue. And that also kind of comes part and parcel to the cooled astronomy camera. Now in the red, we're starting to see a little bit of detail. So that's the hydrogen gases that we're picking up, and the dark area would just be the areas that are kind of in shadow from some of the dust in the area. But again, so this is also an example of what you would see out of a monochrome camera that's that you'd be using to photograph space. Now, just overall, with the green is usually going to be a much cleaner channel, And actually, it doesn't look like the stars are too bad overall, which is nice because usually you can kind of get some bloating where the stars are going to have a little more coma around them in the green channel. So I'm happy with how that's looking already. But yeah, with that, the red is this is primarily going to be the channel that I will also use to kind of pick up more details a little later on. So all those combined, you get your RGB image. And so what I want to do at this point is, now that I have enough separation of those channels, I can pick out a area with the eyedropper tool and just kind of set the gray point of this image, and that's going to align the red, green, and blue channels. And you can just see that's gotten rid of that green cast. And you have a faint view of the nebulosity in the middle of the image there. And then you can see the stars have, you see you're getting white stars, you're getting red stars. And some of them, you may need to do a little more care with them to get the colors right on there. But I think again, I'm going to take this area that I've chosen because that's and it's a pretty good, looks like a pretty good balance. Like I said, I'm getting white stars, I'm getting red stars, and it looks like some of them are a little bit of a blue cast, which is what you want to see, and that's basically what you're going to be seeing in the stars. And you know, the white stars are usually going to be younger, hotter stars, and the red ones you're looking at you're looking more at red giants, and those are either going to be much farther away, they're going to be even larger because they're kind of exhausting their fuel supply, so they are getting larger and more a little cooler as well. Whereas the white stars are going to run much hotter than the red giants, and so the blue star is going to be running hotter. Our sun is a white main sequence star, and that is it's nice stable in the scale for stars in the Hertzsprung-Russell scale, whereas you're going to see stars that'll kind of go from the main sequence to either a red giant or supergiants, and other ones that will kind of go into like a white dwarf or a black hole, and something like that. It's something that maybe I'll better explain with some diagrams a little later on, not tonight, but in another stream there. But actually, I'm going to take a quick pause and just, they have actually I've collected a few new followers, and I probably should have said this at the top of the stream, but I'll pick out a format eventually, don't worry. But I do want to thank Bubba Zelnik for following me, the Old Balls for following, Ms. Meacher, Real Smoothie, and Fat Cow J. Thank you guys for giving me a follow. If anyone is watching, if any of you guys are watching on right now, appreciate that very much. And hopefully, yeah, we got some more cool things coming up. And like I said, I'll be doing astrophotography processing. I'll be doing live astrophotography. That is the main thing that I do want to have on this channel. Anytime there's going to be a clear sky, I want to be out there and sharing these images of the universe with you guys. And the odd time, I'm going to be playing some video games, because why not? That's kind of what happens on Twitch as well. So I want to keep a varied bit of a stream, just to kind of keep things just kind of keep things a little more dynamic. And yeah, later tonight after this, I will be jumping on to play Phasmophobia, and that's a new horror game that's recently come out. And yeah, it's I played a little bit last night, and it is pretty creepy. It's you get right if you can get into the game. It's just it's a very eerie feeling that you get from that. But that's a little later. Right now, what we are looking at is the Cave Nebula, and I'm gonna start pulling out some more. This is at this point in the image is when you can really start to see some details coming out. Now we'll see how this little change goes, because this is where I basically can either really kind of blow it out, or you can really start to see some details, and I am happy to see some details. That just depends on the type of how aggressive I want to be in the image. Now, I mean, if I go, now these are also some presets that are used for astrophotography, and this is called ArcSign, and it is a few preset curve adjustments that are designed to keep the stars at the same size. Whereas if you can sometimes bloat the stars too much, and you're just left with these really bright circles of light that are just overpowering your image, and you lose some of the color in there as well. So I think I'm going to go with with this level here, and you can just see it's really started to pull out the you can see the nebulosity around the area there. You're starting to see the form of the Cave Nebula, and the stars are looking pretty good. Now it does look overall that there is I do have a gradient going from red to green, and that also comes from the fact of some of the street lights in my area are impacting just creating that gradient. Whereas a little later on at about 1 in the morning, thankfully the street lights in my area turn off, and instantly I have a better image to deal with. But we've now reached astronomical dark. It begins at about a little after 8 o'clock. So at that point, the sun isn't impacting the sky anymore, and I'm able to start imaging much earlier in the evening. Whereas in the summertime in the UK, at the latitude that I'm at, we lose astronomical dark for a few weeks. And at that point, that meaning that the sun just doesn't get low enough in the sky to reduce any impact on the night sky. So there is just a little bit of lightness overall to the night sky, and it's really noticeable as you're doing image by image how you can see it's getting a little darker with each exposure. But once the sun starts coming back up, you can just see each progressive shot that you take start getting brighter and brighter overall. So it's that time is really tough to get into, to be able to see as many targets as you can. Also in that time, at least that is more galaxy season when we lose astronomical dark here. And not to say that I don't like shooting galaxies. It's a bit of a different process that you have to do to when you're shooting galaxies, that you are going to want to shoot more broadband, whereas with nebulae you want the narrow band, because you want to get rid of any and all any pollution, any light pollution that's kind of coming through, and really just any extra space on the visible spectrum that you're kind of looking at is almost wasted on a nebula. You want to just capture the hydrogen or the oxygen 3 or the sulfur 2 if you're going to be creating like a Hubble palette image, which has that nice rusty and blue ethereal kind of look that people can get with those. Now with the bands that I'm shooting at, hydrogen alpha, oxygen 3, and hydrogen beta, that is basically red, green, and blue, and you can't really pull a Hubble palette image with those colors. But this is shooting this one, you are going to get a more, you can get closer to a well, it is a false color image in a sense, but you are going to get a like I said, you get the idea of the reds and the greens and the blues showing through here. So at this point, let's jump back to just the single color channels. And now that we've been able to pull some more detail out, you can see in the blue channel and the hydrogen beta, you really can't make out much of the cave nebula. Whereas you go into the oxygen 3, again, it's still the same thing where you're not getting as much detail, but overall you get a bit of a cleaner signal. You can kind of see, just switching back and forth between the the green and the blue, there's just that little less noise. Hopefully, I don't know if that is coming through too well, or if that's coming through there, but the green channel, because there is more green sensors on there, that you're going to pick up more of that signal. It's just going to be less interpolation that needs to be done with the camera and the green channel. But then switching to the red, you see that's what we're capturing, the hydrogen alpha gas, because that's much more abundant in the galaxy, in the universe, than pretty much any other element. And that's so things like that, that's where we're going to start to be able to pull out more detail with the image. So, and that you go back to your overall RGB image. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do one more. I'll take a look at the levels, and I'm starting to see that peak on the levels is starting to kind of bow out near the bottom there, and at that point you're going to start to run into some inconsistencies with the image. So I'm just going to do one more stretch on there, one more curves adjustment with using those arc sign presets, and you can start to really see that color gradient, and that's I can subtract that out of there afterwards. And there's many different ways that people will do that. I'm just seeing what's going to I think sticking that arc sign 100 might be the way to go. You can see that because this also is I was only doing 3-minute exposures, I wasn't collecting that much signal overall, and this is a bit of a faint, it's a bit of a dark target, where other areas with hydrogen alpha it's much more abundant, and you can just kind of see, you get more of that signal kind of coming through, that's picked up a lot better, whereas this is a darker area, and it really does deserve more integration time, where I would probably even rather see 6, 7, 8 hours at least on this target before really getting a nice image out of here. Like, I already see that there is going to be some of the noise that's kind of come through there just from not having enough signal in there, but we'll go with that. And actually I'm going to try to do a process that will get rid of this gradient. it's going to kind of run through and do its thing on there. And this is part of an astrophotography tool set that has come in handy a lot. Now I'm going to see, I feel like I've lost a bit of the overall color there. And that can be brought back with doing some saturation adjustments maybe. But you can see it's just not too bad overall. The way how we've lost that color banding there. I think that's going to be fine because I can go back and pull those details out of there. Now there's also ways that people will kind of isolate their stars and make sure that those aren't going to be impacted too much by the processing tools that you'll use. However, there are some other some other tools that can be used. And some of these processes are pretty quick. Some of them can take a bit of time. I'm basically going to use the ones that are going to not take a long time, so we are actually kind of keeping things moving. Especially because we can't can't see the other windows that are kind of popping up as this is running. But I have run the increase star color option on here just to kind of bring those details out there. And well, it does seems like it might bloat them a little bit, but let's just it's almost a subtle change, but you can definitely see that it's brought out the blues and the reds and the whites in the stars. And starting with that, I think that's going to be pretty good for the next process that I run. And that's going to kind of bring out the contrast of the nebula itself. It's going to reduce the stars, and sometimes this can work out really well, and other times it can create these ugly black halos around the star. And again, that's just from just the way how you're shrinking the stars, reducing the impact that they have on the image there. And usually with this, with this process, sometimes it can take almost 5-10 minutes depending on the size of your image, because there is a lot of filters and adjustments that this does automatically, because this is a very detailed set that someone has that Noel Carboni is the author who made this these astrophotography tool sets, and he's incorporated from one click to go through a bunch of processes that will help bring out the details in your image. And it is a kind of a general tool to use, because not every image is going to need the exact same processes done. So it's you kind of go through it, you'll see what works, you see what may not work, so you can easily, with Photoshop, easily just go back a step and you can try something different. And now I also, to be fair, I haven't saved this image yet, so now saying that, if anything does go wrong, oops, then I kind of starting back at square one. At that point, I would abandon all hope. We'll go through Space Engine a bit, and then I'll play a horror game. But generally, this hasn't. Nothing's really gone wrong there. But now that I say that, now overall, I think just the way how things are looking on the stream from the settings that I've changed from last night, um, it looks all right. I mean, I did lose some frames right at the beginning, and I think that kind of it'll generally happen, but nothing else has changed. I've been doing with Photoshop. I can take up a lot of memory and put a lot of strain on the computer. However, things seem to be running really well, and that's just from changing a few settings. I'm now running at 720p rather than 1080. So yeah, I'm dropping the resolution there, and for the most part, what I'm seeing, it doesn't look that bad overall, and I think everything, just things are running a lot smoother. Yeah, definitely happy with how that's turning out. Because the other night, it was just I found a lot of stuttering. Now we'll see how that kind of works a little later on tonight. Running a power hungry game on the computer as well, and that'll be a bit of a test. However, I mean, Photoshop as well is taking up a lot of memory on here, so we'll see how that goes. And I also said this process can usually take a little while, and the one I chose usually doesn't. However, because I was bragging about it taking such a short amount of time, it's going to take its sweet time. And yeah, once this process finishes, this process is called Enhance Deep Space Objects and Reduce Stars. So it's going to bring out the details in the nebulosity, but it's also designed to shrink these stars. And you just, we'll see if we're looking at this now, and we'll see how it shrinks the stars. I'll kind of go back and forth with the on the image there, so we can see how much has changed. But generally, running this one action once will do the trick, and you can just kind of build on the image from there. And because this can get a little aggressive, and like I said, you can be left with stars with some like black halos around there, especially in the red channel. And that seems to be all right for sharing these on Instagram and Twitter and things like that aren't going to always have a large image anyway. And these images can work. They look a little better when they are scaled down as well. So it's the sensor size is about 3,000 by 3,000 pixels. So it's not going to be a large image anyway. The camera is a 9 megapixel image size, so it's from what it's done, it's been really good for me. That's the ASI 533 MC Pro, a dedicated astronomy camera from the company ZWO. And yeah, this camera has you can see here, this is a square image because it's a square size sensor on there. Usually you'll have your wider sensors that are like essentially the 16 by 9 kind of looking aspect ratio. And yeah, with this one, it was kind of going back to what I felt was like the old school square TVs, rather than the widescreen that we're used to now. Now that process is finished, and it was left a bit of an overall red cast, and that happens as well. So you can see, I'll jump back to some of the smaller stars in there are shrinking just that little bit. There's a little bit of change on there, especially with the blue stars. And like I said, I've lost a bit of that the dark sky behind there. So what I'm going to do is set the gray point again. That's not too bad. Yeah, what I can do is I can run the saturation on there a little bit. So what so in the black and white, this is our red channel, where we're getting much more detail coming through, and you're able to see there's a definite the space here, which is the cave part of the nebula, but then just also these other bits of dust around the area that that's blocking out some of the hydrogen alpha signal. And in the green channel, you can just see that there's not a lot of oxygen 3 in this area, so it's not picking up a lot of that signal. So the red and the green, there's just that big difference in catching all the details in there. And even in the blue, it's the hydrogen beta, there's more, both the green and the blue, there's not a lot of signal in there. It's all really in the red. So what I usually do is I want to pick out that detail in the red. So let's see how this goes. I want to make a new grayscale using the there we go, that's worked. So really what I'm working on now is I have this red channel in the in a new window that is it's just using that gray, the gray channel there. And what you want to do is maybe just a little bit of just clean that up just a little bit there, because you can see there is a bit of noise. Just going to want to tidy that up a bit. There is some other noise reduction programs, and this is one called Denoise AI, and that's by company Topaz Labs. And a interesting side note is when your eye is itchy and you've cut up hot peppers, don't touch your eye. I've done it again. Absent-minded. Right. So what I've done here, I've just reduced the noise a little bit on this image. And holy potatoes, does that burn? Oh, I'm doing it again. Why am I rubbing my eye? All right, let's deal with this, because it's annoying. It's not bad, but it's annoying. So the image that what I've done on here is just I've reduced the noise a little bit, and what this what this is going to do is act as a luminance layer. And what that does is that just going to make some of these the red areas in the image just kind of really you can really make that pop and just add that contrast to things. So usually you can combine the blue and the green channel on this to maybe even out some of the noise, and also yeah, if there's any extra details in there, kind of bring that out. But because the green and the blue are have like little to no detail in this, I'm just going to use the red channel. And select that and make sure we're back on our full color image here. And what I'm going to do before I put that in there, just going to bump up the saturation a little bit, and we increase the vibrance in these colors as well. So because when I put the luminous layer, it's increasing the contrast, but it is going to kind of suck the color out of the image a little bit there. Actually, what I want to do is just a quick check of the sky. Take a momentary break and just see the offshoot chance. Do we have any clouds clearing up? Now, funny enough, when I'm using the night vision, you can't see the clouds, and yeah, that is a lot of cloud coverage there. So this was about the time when things are supposed to be clearing up. I'll keep an eye on that, but I don't. Which way is it moving? If it's coming from the north, generally, I haven't had much luck with that kind of weather. When you're looking from the west, it's I have a much clearer view to the west, and I can generally gauge on how clear the sky is going to be from that way. But the north, things can be a little more unpredictable. So we'll leave that back with the spooky scope cover. I could think of a name, but if anybody has a suggestion for the name of this ghost for October, feel free to suggest that, and we'll figure out a name for him. Patters B, hello from Canada. Hey, how's it going, eh? Good to see you on here, man. Thank you very much for stopping by. We are, I'm processing a astrophoto tonight because, well, there's clouds everywhere right now. So yeah, it's we're processing the image of the Cave Nebula, and we're about, I guess, a little over halfway through going through the image, and we just kind of started right from scratch to kind of get a good idea of just how much time can be going into a photograph that you've taken to bring out a little bit more detailed image. And just the way how this one is going, it's not going too bad. There are some areas that I'm seeing that I would be a little more picky about, but for the sake of kind of running through this, it's everything's kind of look fairly good to what I want to achieve here. So what I've done is kind of pulled out a lot of the details of this area, and I have isolated the what is the, oh sorry, that's not going to work on there. I have to be on the right layer. Is I've isolated this red channel where we're getting all the detail from the hydrogen alpha wavelength. And because in the green and blue, yeah, there's not much image, not a lot of nebulosity that you pick up at all. So it's all mainly in this red channel. So what I've done, I've copied that one, I've cleaned it up a little bit, and when I paste that on there, so that's just the gray image, the grayscale red channel on top of the full color image. Now it's the same red channel that I'm getting from this image. However, there are other filters that you'll use that is just solely for the hydrogen alpha wavelength, and that way any light that comes through in the red, the green, and the blue channels, you're only going to be getting from that one certain wavelength. And whereas this filter I'm using, 3 different wavelengths of light are coming through, so there is a bit of other information that kind of gets picked up there. I think probably in a few weeks, once the Rosette Nebula kind of comes into view, that's a really good target to show some of the what comes through in the red channel, what comes through in the green and the blue, and that's a little more. It's a much larger target than the Cave Nebula, whereas the Rosette would fill up the entire canvas here. So that is a little more indicative of just kind of what details. So enjoy your work on Instagram. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, that's where Instagram is where I'm going to be posted, where I post a lot of my finished images, and I'll kind of back it up with the story, throw in some information there. Yeah, so we tried getting out imaging last night north of Toronto, but the clouds rolled in. That is, at this point in the season, yeah, it is kind of that transition that we got between the seasons where the weather's getting a little unstable. Like even here in the UK, it's the weather's not that favorable either. So right now it's been clouded over for the past week, and I had what I thought was going to be a bit of a clear night last week, and yeah, as soon as I got set up, all the clouds came in. So those clear skies are coming at a premium at the moment. Once winter gets into full swing, you kind of get a little more stability, because there's just not a lot of you can have a more stable atmosphere, and when the skies are clear, it's just a little more crisp as well. So looking forward to for when winter rolls around. And luckily we don't get a lot of snow in this area of the UK, so not worrying about that. Yeah, just frost, but that's easily dealt with using some dew heaters. The area that I'm in is also it's a moderate amount of light pollution that I have on the Bortle scale, which ranges from 1 being your dark sky site where you're basically not impacted by any city lights at all, up to 9, which would basically be if you were trying to image in Toronto at, like, say, Yonge and Dundas Square, you're not gonna get a great image out of the camera. You're definitely gonna have to use narrowband filters, and there are some filters that a company out in California, that OPT, Oceanside Photo and Telescope, that they have come up with these filters. That they're really expensive, but the results that have come from these filters are amazing. It's incredible what you've done, because they've shot from Times Square in New York. Yeah, they've put a lot of work into these filters, and the filter I'm using is a tri-band narrowband filter, but it's not as advanced as what they're using for these Radian Triad and the Triad Ultra filters. So you're Bortle 7 in Richmond Hill. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a bit of a task there. Are you do you have any other? Are you using just like a city light suppression filter, or what kind of things do you use? Because I started off using basically started off using no filter, so a lot of my images were fairly beige from all the light pollution, and eventually I moved to an Astronomic CLS clip filter for my camera, and that really started cutting out a lot of the pollution. But I was still being impacted greatly by like the street lights in my area, so it was definitely, whenever I was shooting straight up towards the zenith, I was getting some really good images because I wasn't, um, the streetlights in my neighborhood weren't, um, weren't coming in as a factor on there. But once I moved to uh, the one shot color tri-band filter, just so much more was available in the sky, and there was getting a lot more detail out of my images. And I have thought about getting a like hydrogen alpha filter just dedicated for that, but um, again, at the time of night, the clear skies being at a premium, it's um, this filter is just doing the trick, and like I'm able to at least isolate a little bit of that hydrogen alpha signal. Um, all right, using a clip filter in your Nikon for this light pollution. Yeah, so that's gonna be that'll be all right. I guess maybe shooting at a little shorter exposures to kind of at least mitigate some of that light pollution. Am I following you on Instagram? Because I do have a couple people I see from Richmond Hill, so I'm just wondering if I actually am following you, and I am more familiar with you and your work than we're letting on here. Yeah, I was looking at the it's the IDIS brand that you have there. I was looking at the IDIS because Trevor Jones on Astro Backyard was he was always heavily touting those IDIS filters, and yeah, when I was starting to kind of get into things, I was looking um, at those filters there. Brad, all right, hey Brad, I'm Tom. um, yeah, looking at those IDIS filters, there's still some of them that these companies are putting out. They're good filters. That from what I've seen, it really depends on what your goals are. So yeah, there's going to be a specific filter for whatever kind of situation we're going to be in. Um, but yeah, this of the things that I've invested in, the tri-band filter has been a really good idea, and this one is it's distributed by a company, Altair Astro, in the UK. I would imagine they still stock maybe some other companies out. I know Ontario Telescope and accessories in Bolton, Ontario. They have a fair amount of stock in there that they carry. So I don't know if they do have many Altair Astro products or not. But I think from what I've kind of gained from this filter, I would recommend it to anybody who's looking to improve the improve how well the light, how much signal you're going to be getting through there. So jumping back to the Cave Nebula, so I have just the hydrogen layer here in the red on top, and if I switch that from normal to luminosity, because that is when you're shooting, if you're doing like RGB and you have LRGB and the L for your luminance layer, that's what's gonna basically bring this image, you get that contrast to come out there, because you can see here's the RGB image without the luminosity layer, and there it is now, and it's just that better contrast that's kind of popping through there. And like I said before, at a sacrifice of losing some color, you are gaining some contrast there. And really, you can kind of slide. I can move those layers of saturation over top and just start bringing out the colors within that there. Now, I also, when I am processing the photos, I do try different I'll look at different blending modes to see if maybe I'll be able to pull out some stuff. So I follow Astro Photocross from Whitley Bay in the UK. Your aunt lives in Newcastle. All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, Astro Photocross, I don't know if I'm following them. I'll have to have a look. I'll check on that afterwards. I do try to follow just as many people as possible, because everybody's going to have a different take on things. Yeah, just some different ideas, which is always cool to see how people just interpret different things. So you use a 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8 and a SkyGuider Pro with the ASI Air Pro. Cool. Yeah, yeah, I'm running with the original version of the ASI Air. I picked that up a few months ago. I guess almost a year ago now, close to it. Yeah, and that's been like one of the other best things that I've picked up for astrophotography, because it's just easier to kind of get things going. Whereas before, when I was well, if I was using my Star Adventurer Pro, and that was you really had to get a good feel for the night sky. Not to say that you're losing out on using the ASI Air, but I've spent more time trying to track my image down than I was actually shooting it with the Star Adventurer. Astrophoto. Okay, yeah, yep. Astrophoto Russ, definitely following that one there. Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so picking out just a different, sometimes I'll see a blending layer that might work out a little better, depending on the target there. See, I kind of like how the color dodge is bringing out some more contrast, but it's just way too aggressive on it. So I'm going to go back to the luminosity right now. And already looking at the way how this image is kind of coming together, I definitely would want to have a lot more time on this target, because I am seeing it is still a bit of noise that's kind of coming through. But that also does come from doubling up when throwing on the extra red channel over top of it, because it's the exact same noise pattern that I'm just throwing on top of the image. So I'm just kind of amplifying that a little bit. Whereas if I'd done a shot with using just a hydrogen alpha filter, I would have a different image set that I could use, and that would just kind of mitigate some of the noise that was coming through there. but also again with there's more that you can do with per channel processing process processing. Why am I getting tripped up on that word? I say it over and over. It's not a word anymore. It doesn't exist. I'm pretty sure there's got to be a word for that as well, where the words of you just don't feel the meaning behind the word anymore. I digress. The yeah, because what you can do, you can really get into fixing up the green and the blue layers to try and pump up some noise, decrease the noise, and just trying to pump up a little bit of the contrast in there. But doing that can also take a lot longer than what I'm out to achieve here. I've been trying a program called Serial for processing and Deep Sky Stacker and Photoshop. I have not heard of Serial. Is it it's a free program that it's available, or is there anywhere? I'll check that out for sure. Because I'm always interested. I did the PixInsight. I ran a trial of that, and I really liked how a lot of the images come out there. And I think because that is more for as dedicated to astrophotography processing, that the images or the filters and the actions in there are more geared towards things than in Photoshop, where you get the people have made the action sets to to force Photoshop to do what we want it to do for these photos. And it's a free PixInsight clone. Okay, cool. So does it seem more intuitive than PixInsight? Because I know there's a lot of people who give up on PixInsight because it just doesn't have that same flow, that intuitiveness as Photoshop can. Because you're learning like an entirely new language that's on there. Right, so with the luminosity layer, I've dropped that opacity down a little bit as well, just to kind of still maintaining the detail in there, but it's not as aggressive. Now, all right, cool. Serial. All right, I'll have a look at that a little later, for sure. And also mainly because I haven't set up a separate window in OBS right now or a separate scene to have that to look at another area of the computer. But that's again something else I'll add to the next round of the stream. Yeah, no, pretty easy to use. Yeah, definitely, the easier things can be, the just the better. It's just going to have more enjoyment processing an image. I really don't believe that astrophotography should be hard. I know there's a lot of people who kind of say, well, I had to go through all this. They had to faff about with tracking their own stars and taking forever to process their own images, and it's kind of become not a one-click wonder right now, but it's just people are making processes easier to get your final image there. And yeah, definitely it just makes space easier for everyone. And yeah, it doesn't have to be hard. And like, there are ways that you can really get into things. And I know with Dustin Gibson, what I've heard him say in the past is that he doesn't like spending any more than 10 minutes on an image for processing. So it's yeah. Whereas I can be content with working for a few hours on an image, really fine tuning things. Um, and yeah, it comes down to what people like to do a little more there. I found out about it from Quiv, the Lazy Geek. Yes, I do follow his channel. It's pretty cool. He seems like he has a lot of fun with everything that he does. He has a really great attitude towards things. His videos are fun to watch. Yeah, and he's in Tokyo, and he's in Bortle 8, Bortle 9. So he's really working hard to get those images, and really just try to make everybody else's life easier. Actually, it was his review of the Telegizmos 365, which is the filter that I'm using, or the filter, the cover that I'm using on the scope right now. And this thing has been outside for the past week. There has been rain, and I do have one of the desiccant filters underneath there to kind of absorb any of the moisture, and that's worked out really well. I did have the cover off earlier today just to let things breathe a little bit. And yeah, there's no leaks, no nothing. The scope is nice and dry underneath there. So it's yeah, definitely a worthwhile investment if you are able to leave things outside, because yeah, some setting up can take an hour and a half sometimes, depending on maybe just how motivated things can be. But yeah, definitely that those Telegizmos 365 for the price, it's better than using a bin bag and a blanket. Rain? It doesn't rain in the UK. No, not at all. Not at all. Oh, I hate the rain sometimes. Although, to be fair, you don't have to shovel rain. We're not going to get 6 inches of rain. You know, if there's one thing I don't miss is shoveling my driveway. Although when I first moved to the UK, it wasn't too long after that it actually snowed quite a bit, and it was it was a bit of a significant snowfall, and yeah, everybody was freaking out, and that was understandable because that was a lot more snow than they're used to getting in this area. But there have been other snowfalls with a lot less snow, and people go just as crazy, which it's understandable. It doesn't happen here that often, so they don't put in the infrastructure to kind of take care of the snow as well as Toronto would, with having fleets of snow plows at the ready. So yeah, yeah, definitely snow. I don't miss shoveling. That's for sure. Right, so at this point in the image, what I want to do, I will, at this point is where I really kind of start getting experimental on things while I'm doing this. I do start to make multiple layers, and the image can start getting pretty big. Although with using this the ASI 533 MC Pro, the images are about 17 megabytes, and even the final TIFF was about 75 megabytes after stacking, so it's a lot less bulk than using my Canon camera. So adjusting the levels, I am starting to get into areas where the black point is extending a lot farther. So while I'm doing this, just holding down Alt on the Windows keypad and just kind of able to see what is getting clipped as I'm adjusting the levels. And really, like I said, with the corners, I can probably bring those in a little bit. And as I'm talking, I'm noticing that I'm not even on the right. There we go. Do I like the ASI 533? I have quickly grown to love that camera. I was very hesitant to buy it because I was basically deciding between that and the 294, and really it came down to the amp glow, or how little there was to no amp glow on there. Yeah, definitely it's a good camera. It's a fun camera. I haven't had any problems with it yet, and it really kind of depends, I guess, on what you want to, what your goals are going to be in the end for astrophotography. Now, I know with the amp glow in the earlier cameras, it can be obviously you can get rid of that with your dark frames, but it's yeah, for like what I'm doing, what I want to do for sharing live photos, zero amp glow is totally worth it, and it's still about the same price as the 294. And yeah, I mean, well, moving from a Canon DSLR to the Astronomy dedicated camera was such a huge jump that yeah, it's just like that first image that I saw out of the camera was absolutely incredible. So there's almost there's no comparison between these cameras and a DSLR. So if you're moving from that, basically there isn't going to be a camera, an Astronomy dedicated camera that's a bad choice coming from a DSLR. But yeah, I will recommend the 533 all day long. But again, it's going to come down to just what your end goal is going to be for a lot of your photos. I haven't tried a mosaic with this camera yet, and really what I'm going to basically end up is either a larger square or a really oblong rectangle. But it also comes down to also me fixing up my spacing between the flattener reducer and the camera there, because I'm getting either some long stars or some rotation around the edges, around the corners there. But yeah, definitely haven't gone wrong buying this camera for sure. Right, so as I'm kind of doing more of the processing, I'll kind of keep that that gray luminance layer kind of to mind, because sometimes even throwing that on top of while I'm again repeating some of the noise that's in there, it can still add that little bit of detail and just amplify some of that. And it's been a bit of a cheat that I've used on there sometimes, just to be able to bring out some more contrast in the image. You know, even now with this one, let's say I throw another levels adjustment on there. And again, this kind of comes with just I'll merge those, bring that back up. And at the same time, I do also feel that, yeah, I am mucking up the stars a little bit. But again, the whole point of doing this kind of process isn't, I'm not going for an apod with this image. I haven't really, that hasn't been a goal of mine. As nice as it is to see a lot of people that I know have been nominated and actually, you know, winning some apods. It's yeah, that's not a thing that's on my radar right now, because yeah, it's just not. I'm not too fussed about that. I said what I want to do is just share these pictures with as many people as quickly as possible. So yeah, a lot of the experimental image processes that I do on here kind of come with playing with that luminosity layer and building up a lot. And a lot of people will also label their layers a lot better, so that they know at what point they've gotten to. And when I'm being really attentive, I'll do that, especially if I'm doing, say, if I'm fixing up with the grayscale images. I'll be sure to, if I'm bringing in the greens and the blues, that I'll make sure these layers are definitely labeled red, green, and blue, so I know which one I'm working with there. And yeah, it probably should be a best practice of labeling what what point I'm dealing with here. But well, this isn't even a matter of do as I say, because I'm not even saying to label your layers. But if we have a kind of a look at where we've come from before adding the luminance and really boosting that up, there's a good amount, oops, I'll delete the whole layer. There's a good amount of contrast that's kind of come out of there, which I'm liking. In fact, I guess I could just, yeah, turn those off altogether. That's my merge layer. So yeah, so we've gone from that to that. And I think if I had a lot, again, if I had a lot more time on this image, and maybe even the exposures were a little longer. These were at 3-minute exposures. And yeah, also notice I really haven't treated the stars that nice in the image. Let's see. No, that's not good. Just seeing if I can adjust the gray point there. It's still looking a little green. That's way too red. And at this point, this is, well, that's way too blue. Where the a lot of the experimentation can come in, because while I do have a rough, like a rough workflow that I'll use, it's yeah, it can be just some different experimentation. Some images can come together really quick. Some of them definitely need a lot more time, like earlier with the Gamma Cygni Nebula, which I did a couple weeks ago. That image itself was already, it had just such a strong signal, and it was, sorry, I need to clear my throat. It was such a strong signal with that. Yeah, I didn't have, and it was such a vibrant area of the sky. Yeah, I had a better time getting the details out of here. Where this one, where the Cave Nebula, it is fairly dark, so I do feel I am fighting with bringing out a little too much noise in this. But let's see if I can kind of just do a quick bit of a little more saturation, kind of bring that out there. Or sorry, vibrance. Maybe we'll pump up the reds a bit. And really trying, again, not to really blow things out here. The blues, I'm going to drop that saturation down a little bit because those blue stars are too blue. And yeah, because now at this point you are kind of do a little bit of your own take on things, and those are still way too blue for my liking. I wonder if that's even still into the greens. No, it's not doing much. Put that back to 0. Yeah, it's just wonder why that's not working. There we go. It was the cyans that was mucking things about. All right, we'll drop that a little bit on this. They're not as vibrant, but it is the in this area, it's definitely the nebulosity that I want to capture and highlight. So there are now there was the arc sine curves that I was using. Actually, I think I can change the levels on this here. Yeah, so I would basically say this is in the home stretch, and if I did have a lot more signal, a lot more integration time on this image, because it is so dark, I would definitely go a little more aggressive on this. But I think just the way it's turning out now is, like I said, this is the first time I've really worked on this image. I have collected a lot of data over the past few weeks, so there's a lot to go through, and it's there's definitely some noise in here, but at the same time, I never captured the Cave Nebula before, but you can see as you really get in there, way too much noise. So I still haven't gotten enough time on there, but the overall structure is there. The stars aren't too bad. Usually I've had stars overblown because of just being a little too aggressive on things. Now these arc sine presets for the curves I discovered through AV Astronomy, and he has some really good videos out right now that also help with stars, with your star bloat, and he's the one who is kind of gotten rid of the curves on the corners if you're too close to your sensor, if you're too close to the sensor or too far from the sensor. I can never remember which one it is. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, kind of getting rid of those curved stars in the corners there. He's done a good job at getting rid of those. It's a fairly long video, if I remember, because it's not a quick fix that you're going to be doing on this. But yeah, I think what I'm also going to, let's see, now let me flatten this or merge those layers down there, because again, looking at as the image kind of continues being built up, the blue channel is starting to combine some of the red so you are getting some, I guess, some fake signal in the blue, and that also comes from as you're doing the other action sets that are combining all the red, green, and blue, which is where doing per channel doing per channel editing can kind of really improve the images. And I've done that on a few images before, and it takes a little bit more time, but they've also turned out that much better. And I think, again, it's putting that time in that's really going to get your image out there. Now, also on the red channel here, looking at this, yeah, there's some nice contrast in there, but it is getting, I've gone way too aggressive on this, and yeah, it's I think really in the end here, it looks like the green channel has turned out the nicest. So I would almost want to actually, no, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take a hot second here, and I'm going to use that as a new luminance layer because that is fairly clean. I'll even just in Camera Raw update that. Sorry, not update that. I'll just do a little bit of light noise reduction on there. Just to clean that up. Now, you can also kind of, like I said before, combine the red and the blue to even that out there. But I'm just going to use this green channel, which is nice and clean, which is much cleaner. And oop, that's not what I wanted. That's placing right in there. That's not right. There we go. So paste that on top there. That is just the green layer, which has which is a bit of a combination. And that is really maybe this will be just a little subtle change in there. Also, if I'm doing any changes on the opacity, it's basically going to be integers of 5, because unless I'm feeling whimsical or want to annoy somebody, I'll leave it at 21, 19. But yeah, that green, mixing in that green has done a little bit to remove the noise, ease up the noise there, but that's this image also does not have any subframes, so I didn't do any darks, no flats, no bias or anything like that on there. So this is just the 3.5 hours worth of light frames at 3-minute exposures, when hindsight I probably should have been doing 5 minutes to kind of, because this is like I said, a dark area of the sky versus some of the other brighter, more vibrant areas. But yeah, what I think I'll do is kind of set up a maybe do a Discord server or somewhere else that I can kind of keep these images that I've shot throughout the weeks prior, and just have those available to just to give an example of what's been done in the past. And there's targets that can overlap during the seasons, but I think I do like to shoot them on more than one occasion, because it'll depend on where the object is in the sky. So if I was shooting, say, the Pac-Man Nebula, which was a little lower in the sky earlier on, at this point now it is much closer to the zenith, and you just gonna it's just less atmosphere to run through. So, and it'll be up later in the evening, so the street lights will be out and just less light pollution to deal with. Yeah, that's just it's one of the options that we have here. Let me save this Photoshop image. At least that way we have some kind of record of what was done tonight. All right, what are we at? We're at 10 o'clock now. All right, that's all saved there. Cool, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy with how this looks for, the time taken to be, doing going a little aggressive on things. But definitely the first time I've shot the Cave Nebula, and yeah, definitely would definitely want to add a lot more time on this. But yeah, I know it's a cool area, and this was what I did. This was shot with the Skywatcher 72 ED Evo Star, and with a 0.6 reducer, so I'm at about 290 some odd millimeters on this image, so it is really wide field on this. For some reason I thought I had taken I'd shot this with my RC8, and I might have been thinking of a different target the other night. But I mean, looking at the files in the ASI Air, it on my system it changed versions, so it also changed where things were saved. So I do have a lot of files to sort through. Because in my auto run there's the regular files, but then there's also the new folder with which capture your light frames, so it obviously divides them up a little more. Now, one thing I would like to see is no, it doesn't. Is organizing these by the date, or are they organized by the date? Aha! All right. Revelation. I was shooting the Northern Trifid Nebula the other night. Why I was thinking the Cave Nebula is beyond me. But next time I will be processing the Northern Trifid Nebula. Again, it's a very faint target, and I wonder how long did I have on there? Doesn't look like a long period of integration on there, and it does look like I did have some yeah, I had some clouds rolling through on the end there. So yeah, this is an example of an image that would definitely be rejected by Deep Sky Stacker, because yeah, you get stars in two different points there. It's the same star that because I lost the guide star, and so you lose where the tracking where stars are, so you get those streaks, the double stars, when it isn't a double star. So yeah, the clouds kind of started rolling in that night, and I'm gonna guess that maybe these were at 4 minutes for these photos. And that is one thing I like about the RC8, is these nice diffraction spikes. I was always, again, for something like that, I was on the fence about those. And I mean, now that I have, um, the telescope with that secondary mirror in the RC8, I've really quickly grown to love the diffraction spikes as well. Hey, Savvy. Sorry, missed your message earlier there. The weather is going terrible. The everything else is going great, but the weather isn't cooperating. I was kind of hoping that things would have been clear for a couple hours, because the apps were showing some light clouds in the area, but yeah, all the clouds are in the area, so um, that's how it goes. So yeah, we're working on the Cave Nebula, and so next time on with Rainy Day Astronomy, I will be editing this image of the Northern Trifid Nebula, which, I mean, already being able to see that little bit of nebulosity in this image versus the Cave Nebula where you can barely see anything. This one looks to be a little more promising to get some better detail out of. And again, this is one of those other targets that I hadn't shot in the past, so this is a first time target again. So we'll yeah, we'll process those a little later. So yeah, these are my those are the light frames in the ASI Air, and I do have a lot of sorting out to do with the files, and yeah, definitely need to get that sorted. But this was basically our finished image for now of the Cave Nebula, and I would go so far as to crop that in a lot more, seeing now what vignetting has affected things. And yeah, no, definitely I would crop it in about that much. So I still like to have larger stars in that image there. Yeah, to kind of finish things off, I would, let's see, bring the levels in just a little bit more there. Yeah, I would yeah, say that image, for what it's worth, for what I've done on there, that's yeah, I would say that one is pretty much done. Now, as I do like to have a look is in to jump into Space Engine, and just to see how well it goes. All right, if you're out of here, Pattersby, Brad, I will see you around the next time. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to go on a quick break just to refill my coffee after we run through Space Engine. But I'm going to jump onto Steam and just play some Phasmophobia, and yeah, again, continuing the spirit of Halloween, just creep the hell out of myself. But let's go over to Space Engine. This is the free version of Space Engine, and this is the little. We're left off on the Little Dumbbell Nebula. This was from the other night while we were shooting there. I think what I really like about Space Engine is that it just kind of adds a bit of scale to where we're at. And yeah, just to be able to look at the universe from a different perspective. is always cool. All right. Now obviously the tracking is already mucked up there. Now we were at the Cave Nebula, so let's see if I can come up there. The Cave Nebula is it doesn't have the again, still learning the catalog for Space Engine. Let's go to Earth. And see if I can kind of pick out where we're at. What's near the Cave Nebula? Because I would like to see how they have rendered it in here. All right, so let's look for the just looking at just some stars in the area. Let's take a look at the nearby Pablo Nebula, which is NGC 635. M52. Just trying to find something in the area. That I can get close to the let's see if we can maybe find the Cave Nebula, which I think might be a bit of a task, because looking at it from a 3D space is a little different than looking at things from our seemingly two-dimensional view from Earth. All right, there's the heart and soul in the background there. Seeing a lot more stars now. I've kind of bumped up the exposure. Here's Andromeda. Don't think you're going in the wrong way, looking down. No, that's too high. This nebula is going to be somewhere along the the galactic plane. Also, it seems that the mouse pad on here, it doesn't want to track. Now I don't know if that's a button that I've hit. Oh, and maybe it is. Okay, so the Cave Nebula is a little below. I could also probably be sitting here for quite a while, and that's not. There's the Wizard Nebula. I've shot that before. Not in great detail either. There goes M52. You know, I'm going to spin by the Wizard Nebula because it's fairly bright. And it's I've imaged the Wizard Nebula, but I haven't processed the image yet, so there's a bit to do in there. I wonder if that's the... I think that's the heart and soul over there. But what I do like about Space Engine is that it just has these... Well, it just gives a bit more... context. There's the large and small Magellanic Clouds. It's our two satellite galaxies. Yeah, I think I might be may not be able to find the bubble. Yeah, here's the heart and soul. That's not where we're aiming for tonight. Wizard Nebula is nice and bright. And we'll check that out another day. It just seems that yeah, some of the objects don't seem to be listed. Now, an interesting thing that has actually popped up recently in the news is that apparently the shoulder of Orion star, Betelgeuse, or Betelgeuse, depending on how you're going to be pronouncing it, is apparently much closer than originally thought. So this is Betelgeuse, as illustrated by this model. It's a much larger than our sun. See, it's got a diameter of 410 astronomical units. So if you're to kind of plunk that in the middle of where our sun is, it would roughly reach the orbit of Jupiter and Saturn. So, yeah, way larger. And so we find my cursor. These are two planets that are orbiting the star, and they are definitely having a very bad day. Let's see how well they've kind of what they've done. So this is their rendering of what this planet could look like orbiting Betelgeuse. Again, just the oop, right, that's gonna make me sick. close can we get to this planet? How detailed do they make this? Well, I gotta say they do a really good job of this program, and this is the earlier version, so yeah, there's definitely some cool bits on here that are worth exploring. The music fits well with this. So I'm going to say that's going to be about it for tonight on the astronomy side of things. I'm going to take a short break. We'll leave Betelgeuse behind there. We'll leave this view of our Milky Way galaxy. Now let's take just a quick look, as if I would happily abandon the next portion of my stream if there is surprise clear skies out here. And no, the clouds are in full force. So that's sorry, scratching my microphone. That's unfortunate. Well, what actually I'll probably do is I will start a new stream, so I'm having this as my astronomy on my astronomy channel, and yeah, I will jump into Phasmophobia in about 15-20 minutes for those of you who want to join me in getting the creeps. Yeah, so that's that is so that was our image for the night of the Cave Nebula. Thank you guys for sticking around. It's good to see some of the new followers joining in, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing how I process some of the astro photos that I do get, and just kind of get a rough idea of just yeah, how much we need to do to a single astrophotograph to bring out the details that we see posted on online, printed in magazines, kind of shown on TV. That there is quite a bit of work. It's not just a one shot and then you're done. So it's yeah, it's a bit of a process, and definitely, again, something that I do really like to do. It's not if I was to pick of what my favorite thing, it really probably is the shooting of shooting the images, collecting those photons, and just being able to call this kind of image mine and ours when we're doing this all together. So I thank you very much. If you do want to keep in touch with any other misadventures and adventures that I have in astrophotography, I am on Instagram as Astro Canuck. You can find me on Twitter as The Astro Canuck. Facebook group is The Astro Canuck. And find me on Twitch. And I do not have a regular schedule on Twitch because it is very dependent on the night sky. And the rainy day astronomy can come and go, but I'll at least try to give a few days notice of when I'm going to be going online. And supplemental kind of bits will be just kind of relaxing with some video games. And right now the theme of Halloween is playing Phasmophobia, and I'll be on with that a little later tonight. So I thank you guys very much for tuning in, and I'm not here to change the world, I'm here to share the universe. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.